Oh, hello everybody, all you beady-eyed little watchers. This is my first ever Ableton tutorial. I've got to warn you though, it's going to be completely no frills, just straight around the basics of Ableton. I'm not going to give it as much enthusiasm as some of these fucking American YouTubers and stuff because I'm tired. So bear with me. But effectively, we're going to make a little drum beat today. My sort of opinion really on making tunes is music is subjective. There's no right or wrong answers. I mean, there are, I say that loosely, there are some seriously wrong answers in terms of mix downs and things, but I just want to share with you how I sort of put a common drum beat together, explain the navigation of Ableton so anybody that's looking to learn can get rolling. So when you open up Ableton, this is what the screen typically looks like. Ignore this samples folder. You'll probably have no samples folder. You can download a free copy of Ableton on their website, like a free trial. You'll get Ableton 11. I'm on Ableton 10 because I haven't upgraded. However, it's pretty much the same shit. So you'll pretty much have all of these folders down the side. Now, this little section here, this little box, you can extend it. You highlight there, you'll see the arrow changes. If you want to see the sample size, want to see the text more, should I say. And down each section here, so here's some sounds that Ableton have provided for you. So if you click the little arrow, it will open up a sound. And some of these are audio and some of these are MIDI. I'll explain the difference between MIDI and audio in a second. I'm just going to go down, for example, percussion. These, click it, it samples the sound. They sound pretty terrible, let's be honest. Here you've got pre-made drum packs, which are supplied by Ableton. You can download more from their website. So you've got a standard, say 909 kit, for example, there. Give you a sample of drum beat which can be made from that kit. In the instrument section, you've got Ableton stock virtual instruments here. For the purposes of this video, I'm just going to use pretty much most of Ableton's stock stuff, maybe a couple of sample elements, but I'll try as best as I can just to use the Ableton stock stuff so you can familiarize yourself with it. If you want samples, you can see I've got two sample pack folders there. If you download a sample pack, you put it on your desktop, save it anywhere you want on your computer, and you can just click add the folder here, and you click add the folder, route it to wherever that folder is, and you're good to go. It will appear there. Then you can click your samples folder and go in and pick whichever sample you choose. Audio effects, quite simple. It is what it says on the tin. Various different audio effects. To be fair, you'll probably never use all of them in one track anyway, so don't stress yourself out about certain things. There are some key important ones which I'll go through maybe in a later video. MIDI effects, I'll cover MIDI in a second. These are effects that literally go onto your MIDI chains. Max for Live is Ableton's cool added little feature where you can download more sort of packs and stuff and effects and sounds. I don't tend to use it much. Plugins, these are your own virtual instruments. Again, if you want to set up plugins, you need to go through the settings. So you go to options, preferences, you go to plugins, and you can set folders where your plugins, it will scan when it opens up on Ableton. Again, don't really worry about that. There's no point going out spunking hundreds of pounds on virtual instruments when you're just trying to learn anyway. Clips are sort of, let's have a look, wait for it to load up. Not responding. Welcome to the HP 2008 thing I'm using. So these are samples, they're audio samples. As you can see, there's a waveform here. No, it's audio sample. And then they've got more samples as well. So that's your kind of your left-hand column. Along this section, you'll see you've got a MIDI track, two MIDI tracks, two audio tracks. Each one is its own separate individual channel. You probably know that already. Now, the difference between MIDI and audio is Audio, it's best for me to example it really. So if I drag this onto an audio track, there we go. Let it load. I double click this. After a really bad start. This is a preset MIDI pattern. Now, bearing in mind, I don't use these very much, so that's why I made a mistake. You see here, these notes are MIDI notes, and each note is linked to a different sample. If you click this headphone up there, you can, let me just pull this down. You can sample each bit. I don't want to confuse you. I'm going to cover MIDI in a minute. I just wanted to show you a little bit about audio. So let me just get an audio file from somewhere. Let me take a kick drum from here. So if you drag a kick drum onto the audio channel, double click it, you'll see that waveform signifies it's a kick. If I press this play, you'll see it plays the kick drum. Let's pull that down a second. Delete these off. What I'm looking at here is you're looking at what's known as the session view. There's two different views. The session view, which are these little clip bits where you can double click to create a clip. You can extend the size, the length of the clip, either by pulling this up and dragging this across, or you can extend the length this way. So if you wanted to create a 4-bar clip, you'll set it to 4 bars. If you want to create an 8-bar clip, you'll extend it to 8. Depending on whatever clip size you want, you can do it through that. Audio, you can't do that. The audio is the size it is. So when I drag the audio into here, so if I drag this audio kick on, I double click it, you'll see it is, that's the audio size. You can extend the length through warping. It's getting a bit complex, but it is, that's the size of it if you was going to drag an audio on. So I'm going to show you a better way to, well, first and foremost, just understand the difference. MIDI is a signal. So you will tell the computer to play this note, this note, this note, this note, this note in a sequence. And when I press this, you'll see the bar slides across. And whatever sound you've got attached to this MIDI channel will play the notes based on these little triggers, effectively. Audio is completely different because it's just a wave file. Let me cut that. So this is the session view. The good thing about session view is you can create loads and loads of little clips of different things, different ideas, and you can be playing this one and this one at the same time. You can then swap it to play this one, and you can really kind of start jamming and get an idea of, well, really an idea laid down before you start going into the layout and the arrangement view. The arrangement view, if you look up here, it's this one. So if you click this, I'll bring this bar back down. You'll see each channel that you create is on the right-hand side, and it's basically a horizontal version of what we've got on this. So for example, if we just drag a sample from here, let me drag a quick drum pattern over so I can explain this to you. I don't tend to use loops too much. I'll just drag it. So that loop there, you can see it's a 2-bar loop. If I click, that will keep looping round because the loop button selected there. If I take that off and just press it, and then it stops. So if I want to get this loop into the arrangement view, what you can do is literally just take it and drag it over and pop it there. So quick bit of advice, when you're messing around in the session view and you move over to the arrangement view, you see this little orange box. If you want it to play the arrangement, you have to uncheck that orange box, and then it lets Ableton know that you want to play for the arrangement. So it's the same loop. If I want to extend that loop, I can drag it, press and hold, drag it out for as long as I want it to do, and that'll just keep playing. I mean, that's 16 bars. So that's what these two screens effectively do. This section down the bottom is where you'll see either your MIDI notes. So you'll see the piano roll. So if I was to double click on create clip here, you'll see the piano rolls there. You can zoom in if you see the magnifying glass, press and hold, zoom in, slide across. You can also enter notes, for example, and then fold it down. So you're only dealing with the, let's say you wanted to play in key and you only wanted to work with certain notes, you can fold it down. You can also zoom in from this side by sliding left or right. Just look for the magnifying glass again. So that's one side of it. Now, this is a MIDI channel, but there's absolutely nothing on it at all. So I've just created a MIDI clip. Audio, you'll see down the bottom here, you've got the audio itself, and then you've got this separate little box which is attached to it. What this is for is for you to drop things in. So if we play this audio clip, but you wanted to add an effect on it, for example, let's say you wanted to put an auto filter on there. Double click the auto filter with the channel selected. That's now attached to this waveform. And if you play it, you'll see whatever you do in this will affect that channel. And then that can link, you can have multiple things attached to that. And the chain can be as long as you want the chain to be. And that works the same with MIDI. So that's the basics of it. Now, what I'd recommend is when you start a tune, up here on the left-hand side is your tempo. So personally for me, I like to make tunes at say like 126. That's sort of my sweet spot. If you want to make a tune at 120, 133, you want to go higher, you want to sort of do drum and bass up there, 170s and stuff like that. It's entirely up to you what you choose, but I'd really recommend setting that first. You can change it afterwards, but it's for me, if you're going to drag an audio sample from YouTube in, what Ableton can do is it can auto warp the sample for you, and it will try and get it as close to the timing as possible. So always try and set that first if you can. There are ways around it. It's a bit complex for today's video, so we won't cover sort of audio warping at the minute. Another thing I need to mention to you guys is timing. So when I showed you here this loop length down the bottom, you need to understand that when you're drawing MIDI patterns, that there's a timing element to it, and it needs to correspond with the tempo. So rather than you just creating a MIDI pattern and going, you know, it sounds right and it sounds in time, if you're playing something over and over again, it won't loop correctly. So you need to stick to the guidance of this bar at the top where it says 1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4. So that's basically on a 4-bar beat, it'll go 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 kick drums. So the kick drum will land on the 1, the 2, not quite the 2, the 3, and the 4. And you can loop that round. And that will be in time. So I'm going to put a kick drum on that just to show you what I'm talking about. So to put a kick drum on this, because at the minute, if I play it, it's just a MIDI file. You can see the yellow lines are striking. There's no sound attached to it. So what it needs something to play. So if you come over to instruments, for example, grab something like a sampler or a simpler. Let's use a simpler. Simpler and a sampler are similar, but I'll explain the difference. One's better for audio in terms of like melodies. If you're taking a sampled sound, let's say you take a F sharp sample and you want to put it in a different key, I'd use sampler. If you're just using drum beats, you can use the simpler. So we'll take this drum beat, this simpler. I'm just going to drag a standard kick from my samples back on here. Let's just take a kick. This one, for example, I'm going to drag that on. And then you'll hear, if I click this, 1, 2, 3, 4. And what I was trying to say is if you, for example, wanted that faster and you were like, you know, that sounds too slow to me. What I want to do is I'm going to make it like this. Then cool, it might sound right to you, but when you start building everything else in and start changing the tempo, it's going to be completely off. It won't fit smoothly. So your best way is if you stick to the grid. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And if you really want it to go that fast, if you increase the tempo up here, do it by the tempo. So be mindful of this grid at the top. That will keep things in time. So you can see what I've done there is I've taken an audio sample kick, which is if I drag onto the audio file, you'll see it's just an audio file. Only play once on there. I've put it in to a simpler, which is up here on the instruments. I've took the simpler, I've dragged it onto the MIDI track. That then comes into this file here. What you can do from here is you can change the sound. So if you didn't like that kick, you can drag this kick into there and it will change the kick. Let's delete this one. Come back to this so you can see it. And you can just audition through. So, I mean, for me, I like the sound of that kick. You can notice there in the sample, that's an A. So it's in the key of A. So it gives us a clue. How I normally do, well, with kicks are a funny thing, right? You don't need to be sifting through a sea of fucking kicks all the time. You just need 5 or 6 kicks that you like the sound of that you can continually use and just keep reusing them. That's what most producers do. What I like to do with a kick is switch it on to one-shot mode. I like to shorten it down a little bit, and then I like to use the fade out just to tail it off. So I like my kick to be around sort of 150 milliseconds. So you hear the difference there. I can make the whole thing be extended or shorten it. So I put the tail off there just so it smooths out just a little bit nicely. So there we go, simple kick drum. Now, if you want, you can really make things easier. What I typically do, I'm just gonna get rid of everything here, is I'll use an individual channel. So you right click, insert MIDI track for each individual sound. But if you come up to drums up here, so say you like the sound of a 909, if you double click the 909 on this, what it will do is open up a drum rack. Now, drum racks are your best friends. What drum racks are is they're simple as attached to a pad. So every time I click this box, you'll see here that the audio file within the simpler changes, and it gives you sort of a pad. So each sound here is different. Now, don't worry if you don't have a MIDI keyboard. Noisy bastards. I live in the town centre, guys, so it's quite noisy, so I do apologize. So each sample, I was saying, don't worry if you haven't got a MIDI keyboard, because what you can do is you can use your computer keyboard. So if you come up to this little piano at the top, if you press A on your keyboard, F, D, F, all the way up. So as I'm pressing these notes, you'll see here this little white, yellow dots popping up. If you press Z and X, that'll bring it down an octave. So that's C3, and I can move up S, D, F, G, W works as well, R, E. So you can just use them if you really want. So you don't really need a pad. You don't need a keyboard, MIDI keyboard. You can just use your own to start with. But what I would recommend probably for newbies is to draw in your drum beats. So again, if you double click here, you'll get a clip. Remember, the kick is on 1, 2, 3, 4. So you want the clap. You'll come down this side, make sure this kick, this little headphone thing is ticked, so you can sample the sound. We don't need the kick, we've already got one. Don't want a rim, maybe we want a snare. So you'll put the snare there, and then you can play the clip it like fuck on the right hand side. Just turn that down a second. Talking about making tunes, so really don't worry about the sound quality, don't worry about the mix down, don't worry about the master. As long as that master's not going into red, you should be okay, because there's kind of 3 different ways of making a track. There's actually building the track and putting it together. Then there's the mix down where you're going to get it to sound balanced and right. And then you've got the master afterwards where you're going to fucking feed that shit donuts and fatten it up so it's club worthy. However, ignore that for the second. So as you can see, and you can just build from here. So if you wanted to put, I don't know, let's have a look. There's a clap as well. Then you're looking for a hi-hat. You can double click and put them in. Very simple. You can go into each individual pad. Again, you can swap that to, let me just move my face out of the way. You can swap that to one shot and maybe make that shorter. Fade it out a little bit. You can manipulate the sounds. You can change the sounds as well. So if you do like the sound of that hi-hat, for example, you can just find another one and drag it on. So although these drum pads are like preset sounds, preset samples, you can change any of these that you want. And how I'll normally make a drum beat, sometimes I'll put it all together. So if I'm going to do percussion, for example, so what I'll do is insert a MIDI track. You can go here and you can select just a blank drum rack, which is the same thing that we've just done. And then I'll look for, say, a hat. Let's just have a little look through. Let me just search hat. This is a bit slow because my computer's shit. Probably shouldn't have done that. You see, it's not responding. Oh yeah, ignore old Vladsky in the back. He's just having to listen to. Fucking come on. So hi-hats folder. There. So you can just take that, drag that on. You'll see that it opens up with a simpler there. Now, because depending on, you see these notes here, you've got like C1, C2. If you want it on C3, you can just drag it up to C3. If you're playing your MIDI, not your MIDI keyboard, but if you're playing your key and you're typing, so I'm pressing H on the keyboard here, and it's highlighted down there. I've got it on the wrong one, so that's H. H is A3, A1. Now it's working. What you can do is you can move up and down the octaves with Z and X as well. So if I press H and then I press X, you'll see that yellow dot on the left-hand side here will go up an extra block. So I'm going to press X, and now it's not triggering that sound. So what I'll normally do is I'll put multiple sounds into a drum rack and I'll build an idea for a drum beat in these little clips all the way along. Now I've just used, and that sounds really shit and basic. I've used this kit, this 909 kit. If you click this arrow there, you'll see that it opens up into the individual little channels. So when we press play, you can see that the clap and the snare are there. If you want to extract them, you can select one of them, right click, extract the chain. It pulls it out the chain into its own separate channel. And you'll see now that this, oh, by the way, that's solo. That's just the clap pulled out its own individual channel. You see it's clipping like crazy. So what you can do then is, rather than let's say you wanted to add audio effects or you wanted to use an EQ to take out certain frequencies, you're not taking out frequencies of the whole thing. Equally, what you can do is you can drag, I'm going to show you an example, take an EQ8. If I drag the EQ8 there, you'll see the EQ8 is attached to the whole drum beat. Now, you don't want to do that. You might want to do it on individual ones. So if I just want to do it on the snare, I can drag it just to the snare. And that will be only on the snare channel. Or alternatively, another way is you can select whatever sound you want. So that tom, and you can drag it and make sure that it's not this side of the line, that it's inside the line. And then that's attached to the tom. So if I play the tom and then I put the low frequencies, it just affects the tom, it won't affect anything else. So you can EQ it that way. And then you can build a chain if you want to put a compressor there, delay there, whatever you want. You can build that chain just on that individual instrument. So I'm going to delete that because I don't like it. I'm going to delete this clap as well. And we're just going to have a little, so my phone's ringing, a little quick jam. So that kick's okay. Your kick level, really, you should leave your kick alone. That's fine. Just make sure your kick's the loudest element in the track. I'm then going to select a MIDI track again. I'm going to go with, I'm going to find myself to bang a simpler on there. Actually, no, sorry. With a simpler, what you can do is you can change the tonality of each individual sound. So we'll actually show you that as an example. Bearing in mind, look, I'm fucking new to this, man. I haven't got a lesson plan. I'm not a teacher, so if I'm chopping and changing, just bear with me. If I take a hi-hat and I drop it onto a simpler, Control Z, remember that will put you back to where you need to be. So I've just took my kick off. Right click, insert a MIDI track. I'm going to drag a simpler onto there. I'm going to then put the hi-hat on. Now, if I play C3 exactly, it will play the same sound as what the sample is. If I play any other key, it's going to change the tonality of it. So you hear that? That's C2. That's C3. I'm just going up and down. So really with drum hits, you don't really need to be messing up. You're not going to create a melodic drum beat. It's useful if your sample is out of key and you've got a hi-hat in there and you think, that hi-hat just doesn't sound right. Well, maybe try and just pitch it down a little bit, or maybe try and play it in the key that it should be. It depends on the key of the sample initially. So really you can just use a drum rack for most of this. So if I put a blank drum rack on, make sure you put your channel on first, because I keep wiping this off because I was selected there. So I'm gonna stick a drum rack on there. We'll go over to samples. I'm gonna pick a hat. I like this one. I'll drag it there. I'm gonna pick a clap. So let me just go to a clap somewhere. Let's have a look. One shots, what's in here? Kicks, hi-hats. I'll put another hi-hat in. Open, maybe not. Parks, let's see. That's all right. You can select a load of random shit if you want. Just drop it in. Search for a clap as well. Hopefully it don't delay. Maybe go with 808 samples. Sorry, I was going to use just solely Ableton stuff, wasn't I? But I've got carried away. Again, the sounds up here. Samples, sorry. Come on. Back time or what? When Ableton starts to do this, if you've got a shit laptop like me, the best thing to do is not press anything. Just leave it alone. Let it calm down. If it crashes, don't worry about it, because when you reopen it up, most of the time it will create a bug report pack and it will allow you to reopen it back up. There we go. There's an Ableton clap. So now what I can do is play each one. It's easy for me just to come into here, draw it in. I know the clap there. I know there's a clap there. I'm going to take standard hi-hat pattern in the middle. So let's play both. I've got these percussion hits. A lot of these are random that I dragged in. I mean, that's pretty funky. So what you can do is drag in a load of them and add a swing to it. You'll notice if I play this now, it's really, really mechanical. Listen, it's going to sound shit. Ready? Doesn't sound right. Now, if you want it to sound a bit more natural, most people add what's called a swing. So if you come over to your groove pool here on the left-hand side, you click that, it will open up something called a groove pool up here. Drag this down a little bit so you can see. And you've got different sort of presets for grooves. So if you go for an SP1200, what the numbers represent is how extreme the groove is. So if you double click swing 50, what you'll notice now is it sounds a little bit more swung. Not really, but let's try. Notice that? So you can add whatever swing you decide to put on there to just, what it does is it swings the notes slightly. So it might move that one slightly forward or this one slightly back. So it's got more of a groove to it. I don't tend to do that too much. I'll tend to just record it in myself. So for example, I will be jamming away. I'll set some swing and this point, you can just fuck around. So I'm not sure what that was. I'm not pressing record. So I liked what I just did. There was when you're jamming away, if you do something, you go, you know what, that sounded cool, but I didn't record it. There's a cool little feature. Oh fuck, I shouldn't have stopped. I'm gonna try that again. Ready? See this box here? So don't press stop, just press this box. It automatically records what you did. So it wasn't this bit that I liked, it was this bit. So all I'm gonna do is take that, get the rest, chop it out. That's gonna loop round. Now I'm gonna go again. Don't like that. Again. I like that. I think it's let's kind of take. Listen. That's right. Delete everything off. And then you can right click here and you can crop the clip. And in essence, you're just fucking about. Add another MIDI channel. Maybe let's go with Ableton drums. Come down here, look at something. Maybe you like the look of the congas. Double click that. Select something different. Doesn't matter. Load that up. Again, create a clip, get it playing, come down, you can either draw it in or use your keyboard to record it in. Make sure when you're recording that this doesn't mean record, this means you've armed the track. It means when you start messing with your keyboard, it will send the signal through to this channel. So record is this one up there. So what you can do is press record and record it in live. It's almost pointless when you've got this little box up there if you capture something. I always find it's better just to jam around and groove around until you find something that sounds pretty decent. So we're going to go again. We're going to mess with whatever's on this Columbia pad. Let's just check it. So we've got, let's go for each individual pad sound. You can change the pitch of each one. You can change the tone of it, all of it. You can cut the lows out, for example, cut the highs out. Just have a play around with these things. You can't really mess them up, but you can individually go into, or you can go into these tabs at the top and change and transpose the pitches down yourself automatically. So anyway, let's jam. That's really funky. Let's take this first bit. Again, I'm going to just on here, I'm going to add the same pattern as the hi-hat to give them. Both of those bits of pattern, and then again, watch your levels. I won't talk too much about levels at the minute. So when your level peaks, this meter here, so when I'm in the kick, it says it's got -516. If I turn this down while it's playing, you won't see it changes. So you have to click this to reset it while it's playing. But again, Command Z, Control Z. He's a good friend of yours. I'm going to set this back to 0. You see down the bottom there. So when I highlight here, the bottom left hand corner says track volume. It changes when I go into each one. We can add a clap, another clap maybe. Search clap. don't normally use these Ableton presets, but we'll take this one. You can double click it. We're just going to open up a sampler so you can simpler. So again, what I mentioned earlier, where you don't really want to change the tonality of it, you can if you want. So you can click this and you come up with a piano roll instead of the drum rack. So what I want to do is just include them. The useful thing for this is, obviously I don't want that clap roll like this. Maybe I want it to on the top to use the same sound. Again, you capture that. I liked it was this bit there. Maybe I don't want that to play every time. So what you can do is crop this back down. I can extend it to two bars. You can highlight the whole thing, press Command D, it'll duplicate it across, take it out there so it only hits on the second, and then you'll just get the difference. Now, what I mentioned earlier, and the reason why I like using this view is because when I click this, you'll see the MIDI pattern. When I click this, you'll see there's nothing there. Let's say, for example, I wanted to take this pattern, which was armed, and add something else. Let's just put this in. What I'm going to do is, oh, fuck, I missed it. Sorry. If you select it, hold Command, click and drag it down, you'll duplicate the thing. So I'm going to get rid of this one because there's nothing on there. I'm just going to move these up and this one. And then on this, I'm going to add this in. So the beauty, I'm just going to get rid of this view to make the channels clearer. You can just click this arrow up and down. And you'll see, if I just move myself out of the way, each individual clip. So what I meant about jamming is you can create multiple different clips with bass lines, different drum sounds, and all of that, and launch them separately. So if I just press this, it's going to play the whole on the back. Let me just turn this down. Never like to skip it. And now I want to launch this clip. Just press it. Just switch between each one. So you know, really simple starting drum pattern. Let's say I like this pattern now and I want to lay it out. I want to put it into the arrangement view. I can click here, add this, drag and drop it onto the arrangement view. Let me just make it a little bit clearer for you. And you can see the clip length size of what I've recorded them in. Most of them I've done them over 2 bars, but the kick I've done it over 1. Appear here. Now, if I want to extend it out with MIDI, I can just drag it across. So if I want to make this whole thing a 4-bar loop, maybe cut the kick out on the last 2, you can. And then to loop this section, you've got a little loop button there. Click that. And now what this will do is it will play along to 4 bars. And then if I wanted to add that extra bit, which was this one, it's a good idea to color code it. So if you right click it, you can change the color so you know that clip's different. So that's red. So that's where the red comes in. I can drag that over to the next 4 bars and then just copy or drag these over to make it longer. So what you'll hear here is a slight change. So it'll just keep moving around. You can add more onto that. You can take stuff away. You can really start to play with it and fuck about until you find something nice. So from there, I would the next step from that, I'd work on that. I'd mix everything down normally with like drum patterns and stuff. As I said, I'll take each individual sound. I'll usually take an EQ. So from the audio effects file, I'll take an EQ, for example, on this, what's on here again? clap. Let's take this clap for example. I'll take the EQ, I'll drag it on the clap, and I'll get rid of all this low end that you don't need, which will start clashing when you come to mix down. But again, you don't really need to worry about that shit. Just concentrate first and foremost on creating like a little groove, because from that little drum pattern groove, once you've got an interesting drum pattern that you like and you're happy with it and it keeps repeating round, and you can start to build on top and start putting bass lines in. I might just put a little fucking bass line into the crack on here, but just have a practice about with that. I don't like this red one, if I'm honest. I'm just going to extend that across. So, for example, if you wanted to add a bass line just to that simple drum beat, easy peasy, create yourself a MIDI track. You can do it in this view, in this view if you like. The track's there. A nice bass line within Ableton is the operator. So if you just drag an operator, this is a virtual instrument, so to speak. So it's a wave generator. It starts off with a sound like this, which is just a simple sine. What I like to do for sort of the tech house stuff is you can see there's 4 oscillators on top. Is activate the second oscillator, maybe just turn that up a little bit and change the waveform to a saw, which gives it a bit more of a, if I go down. Now, the feel of the tune depends totally on what key you're kind of playing in. So if you, from what I saw, the kick sample was an A. I'm going to make sure I'll probably put this in, I don't know, A minor, for example. So I'm going to play like an A minor bass line, which this is the A minor scale. And then with bass, you can just play your track and just start messing around with the bass until you just jam. You can create multiple different channels, different clips. So you can extend that out and just play until you find something you like. It's quite quiet. If you want to just turn it up for shits and giggles, where you're trying to listen to the sound, a good one might be drop a drum bus on it. Sounds a bit better. So. Shit, but let's say you like that. Just wait for Zoom to come out of the way. Again, I've kind of played it in. If it's not quite in time, as you can see, you can highlight it, right click, click quantize it, or put it in time. Or you can just simply draw it in. Easy. I mean, I don't really like that bass line, if I'm honest with you, but the idea is once you've got that drum pattern down, you can just start messing around with any sound to put on the top with a MIDI clip to put it in. The easiest way, but not really the most rated way, quite easy. If you just want to knock tunes out, you can use samples now. I've done multiple courses in my time with some big fucking DJs, and to be honest, you'll be surprised at the level of DJ that'll just pull a sample in. So if you end up with a decent sample pack, not that these are, I've absolutely raped these sample packs. If you end up with a decent one and there's something on there you want to put in, for example, let's take this music loop. It's probably going to sound shit. You can just drag it in and use. As I mentioned earlier, if you got the timing right with that timing bar at the top, this will fit right as well. We need to change the tempo, but I recommend have a little play. If you need any help, give me a shout. But that's simple drum beat. Peace out.